How do you get away from muddy colors like this? Let's say you have a drawing that you're happy with already, like maybe something like this that I drew this week. What exactly are the steps to color it? To make it look like this, maybe? Well, in today's class, I'll show you exactly what I did to get this result. And the good news is that it's relatively simple. Not easy, but simple for sure. Which means you should be able to try it immediately after watching this and hopefully see significant improvements in your results. You know, like instead of doing random things like you've been doing so far and hoping for the best. I've tried it all in my 20 plus years working as a professional artist, and this is probably one of the best methods that I've ever come up with because it's something that you'll be able to replicate 100% in any painting software. I use Photoshop, but it works exactly the same in Clip Studio Paint, Procreate, Krita, whatever you're using. But what about MS Paint? It'll work in any painting software except MS Paint. And I say it's simple because there's going to be only 6 steps to this, and here they are. We'll start with flat colors, then add local shading, overall shading, lighting, reflections, and finally some line art tweaks to wrap things up. And I'll be using super basic digital tools, just like simple layers, blend modes, simple custom brushes that you can actually grab for free with the link in the video description, and of course, a drawing to color. So with our recipe laid out and all the ingredients in hand, let's see what we can cook. Let's start by adding flat colors to this drawing. It's faster to use the lasso tool, at least for me, rather than painting it in, but use whatever you prefer. All we want to start is the silhouette of our character on its own layer. If we look at that layer stack, my lines will remain on top for the whole process, labeled as green like I always do. It just makes it easier to spot when I have a lot of layers, and the flats will just slide underneath. Obviously, this character is going to have more than one color, so right now I'll want to break up this layer into the actual colors I'll be using. We're not going to be thinking about lighting and all of that just yet, so just pick colors as if you were not going to shade this. Just nice bright colors to represent each of the different materials we're working with. Pretty simple so far, right? But if you're looking for inspiration to come up with colors, you can try using the tool at color.adobe.com. And I recommend you try a complementary or like a split complementary color palette, because those are relatively easy to work with and they tend to look pretty good whatever you do. But I also have a class about this stuff that I'll link in the video description if you want to check it out after this. I highly recommend it. And I should say that I'll have this drawing included in my free practice file that you'll be able to download with the link in the video description, you know, if you're just looking to follow along. For personal use only though. Now, moving on to step 2. What we'll do here is select any of the color regions that we've created for the flats layer, create a new layer, and fill that selection with the same color. This is going to be our first shading layer, basically. I like to label this one blue to make it easier to spot in my layer stack again. But yeah, with my new bodysuit shading a layer right here, I'll want to lock the alpha so that I'm not able to paint anywhere else and shade away. So with a darker color, I'll just look for areas where the light can easily get trapped and roughly paint in my shadows with a basic hard brush like I'm using here. And by the way, to select my shadow colors, I'll always be doing the same thing pretty much. Check this out. Starting with my flat colors, I'll go down in values to make it darker, but we're not stopping here, otherwise that would just look muddy. It's important we also drag this to the right so the colors get more saturated. This might be slightly different depending on your software, but in Photoshop you can imagine that you're drawing this kind of L shape, and then drag the hue towards the blue color in whatever direction is closest. So this alone should cure your muddy color syndrome and give you like a nice shadow color. And what I just did for the bodysuit, I'll just repeat for every other color region until the character is fully shaded. Other than the drawing itself, this is probably the longest step, but we gotta get through it. So let's go. So let's see what we got here. Before, after, nice. And before we move on to the next step, you have a choice to make now. A fork in the road, maybe. Are you going to leave it as is, like in a more cell shaded style? Or are you going to blend these hard edges to get a softer look to your shading? I think I'll blend mine a little bit this time. Like not fully shaded, but just a little bit. Like a hybrid of the two styles. And if I fast forward a couple of minutes, there we go. Which one do you prefer? Hard edges? Soft edges? Anyways, it doesn't matter. It's my drawing and I get to choose. And you'll see the rest will actually be a lot faster and easier and maybe more fun, I think. But what's even more fun is being happy with your result. Like, you know, having a solid drawing to color in the first place, knowing what colors would work best to make it shine, and how to design cool characters. All stuff that I teach in great depth in my complete art education program, Art School for Digital Artists, which is currently on sale at half the regular price just for the holidays. You'll find all the details with the link in the video description, so take a peek if you felt stuck in your art progress. I know you'll be happy you did. The reviews speak for themselves. Students get lifetime access, private access to our school's Discord, free updates for life, and a week-by-week structure, taking your hand through all the content so you're never left wondering what to do next. So I hope you check it out and find out why over 30,000 students have joined so far. So take a peek if you felt stuck in your art progress. Happy holidays. Alright, this third step is going to be a lot quicker. We'll add a bit more shading, but completely differently than what we've done so far. So the tool I'll be using this time is just a big soft brush. And I'll actually do this entire step on a single layer too. So let's just control select my flats layer to select the content of the layer, pop a new layer right on top of the other shading layers, and fill this with white, because we'll set this layer to multiply mode. Oh no, it's gone! Just kidding, multiplying white just looks transparent. But the layer is still there. So we lock this bad boy, label it a different shade of blue if you want, and now we can paint some subtle shadows to make this all look, well, less flat. It's still a really subtle effect, but it adds nice gradients of colors everywhere, and I think it looks a lot better. You see this a lot in anime. See how the color shifts as I color pick here? Flat is boring, gradients are the way to go. Just look at the hair now, like before, after, that's hot. On this layer, I'll actually add some other minor stuff that works well on a multiply layer, like the blush of her cheeks, some red tones for her lips, very subtle stuff, and we're done with shading. See the difference this quick pass made? I think it's much better. So next up, lighting. My favorite step. In a way, this is going to be similar to the last step because we're working on a new layer on top of all my shading layers. Except the layer blend mode we'll select this time is hard light, or you can also play around with overlay mode, whichever you prefer. Anyways, just like I did for the overall shadows, I'll load my selection using the flats layer. See how handy this layer has been? And instead of filling this white like last time, we'll use 50% gray. And it's gone. Because, of course, the neutral color for hard light and overlay is gray instead of white like it was for multiply. So now I just gotta use a lighter color than 50% gray and my lighting will be visible. But let's not forget to lock the layers alpha again. And now, going to this, we should probably think of the lighting direction. I'll go with a backlighting as if she had a sunset behind her, going for like something dramatic. An easier light setup would be coming straight from above in case you're wondering, like something like this. But yeah, using a hard edge brush again, I'll block in all my lighting on this single layer. Let's speed through this. And here's what I got. Before and after. I like this. And notice I didn't really blend the edges like I did with my shadows. You definitely could have to get a more like painterly result. But like I said, I'm going for a hybrid between like painterly and cell shaded. And now we're ready for the final two very quick steps. At this stage, we'll be adding reflections to our different materials to help them read better because right now everything looks like it's the same material. In reality though, some surfaces are shinier than others, and that's what makes it all look good. We want that contrast, you know? So with a new layer right below my lines, we'll set that one to hard light again, but we're not going to fill it with a flat gray. Instead, I'm just going to grab a lighter color and color by color, I'll paint the shininess. Is that a word? I don't know what her suit is made of, but it's probably shiny. Same for smaller details like the glint of her eyes, the gloss on her lips, all the reflections on her hair. Compared to everything else so far, this is probably the most subtle change, but now that I'm done, you can see the big difference that it makes. And now we're ready for the final step. At this point, we're basically done. Like if you like the result as is, that could be it. But I do prefer to color my lines when working in this style. So this is going to be very quick, but I'll just lock my layer so that I can only draw on the lines. And for each section, I'll pick the darkest color, like the shadow color, and then darken that just a little bit so it becomes the darkest color. Otherwise, you wouldn't see my lines at all. And then I'll just use that to color the line art in this area. And then rinse, repeat for the whole drawing. And in just like 2 to 3 minutes, I have a colored drawing going from, and look carefully because it's very subtle, but going from this to this. Oh, nice. All right, it doesn't make that big of a difference, but I like it better. Of course, at this point, you could do anything else you feel is needed to call this done, but that's the core method for coloring. Like starting with a line drawing, adding the flats, splitting the flats into their different colors, adding the local shadows, the overall shadows, the lighting, reflections, line color, some final touch-ups, and here's the final result. What do you think? And I just wanted to specify, but if I were to draw a background, which I don't have here, I would go at it a slightly different way. So this is specifically for characters. But if you're curious about the background process, I have a class that you should definitely watch. It'll be on screen up here in a second. I'll see you over there.